to The Sideshow, a podcast about the intersection of film and culture. My name is Jesse Kuba.
And my name's Taylor Ann Harris.
This podcast is sponsored by Seal Creative Space.
It is a versatile space for all your creative needs. Go check them out and let them know we sent you.
You want to tell us about our guest today?
Yes. So Shia Shabazz Smith is a screenwriter, poet, and educator who strives to ensure that her art and service represent her varied communities at large.
Amazing. Yeah. So she and I go way back a little bit. We're in a screenwriting group together.
Yeah.
And we went to Austin Film Festival together as well. We didn't get to see each other because we were partying in different places.
I don't know if I was partying, but lots to do and too much to see in one weekend or whatever.
It was a fun thing.
Yeah.
But you just directed your first short film. Do you want to tell us about that?
So we just shot Dawn, which is my directorial debut. So I'm a newly minted director of short film. And the logline for Dawn is, I hope I get this right. I made some notes. A bereft wine bar steward who's grieving the loss of her parents meets a mysterious nomad who invites her to change her forever. So do with that what you will.
I like the mystery.
I like the nomad part of it. Very mysterious.
Yeah.
Very we don't even know who this person. Nomad from where?
Yeah.
Where you come from?
So it's a love story because I'm all into love stories. And I recently watched The Photograph again. We were talking about what you recently watched.
Was Issa Rae in that?
Issa Rae and Lakeith Stansfield.
Mm-hmm. And boy from Insecure.
Yeah. And initially, I don't know, when I saw it back then, I was not as much a fan this time as I watched it as a director and as a screen. I don't know. I just watched it through a different lens. It was wonderful, and it felt very much like in the genre of how we shot Dawn. Okay. Even though there's a twist, Dawn is a love story with a twist.
So, love the twist.
We love
the twist.
Yes. So So I recently just came out of production, right? So the pre-production started in July, about July.
How did you? What led to this idea?
Okay, so I have been a screenwriter for decades at this point, for 17, 18 years, and part-time. So I have my 10,000 hours as a screenwriter, and I just got tired of watching things be made and having so many screenplays on my laptop. So I went to a film festival. And initially was anxious because I didn't know anyone, and I had gotten an invitation to come. And it was in what feels like an all-white space, or what I thought was going to be an all-white space, and that makes me anxious too. But I round the corner to the registration table, and I meet Sanait Mingstab, who is she's helping to register people for the Brave Maker Film Festival. And so we sort of are like, hey. So I'm excited that she's there. She's excited to see me. She says, do you have a film in the festival? And I said, no, I'm just, here as a spectator. And she said, not yet. And there was something about that not yet that made me feel, I don't know, it planted a seed that I, didn't know was germinating throughout the weekend. So I had gone and was staying there for the weekend, and I went back to the hotel room and I was doing research for a project that I was working on for a film. And I was watching Moonlight, Barry Jenkins. And as I was watching one of the later scenes where they're in the diner, I was like, yes. It got me, and I've seen it several times, but as I'm watching it, I was like, oh, a love story. I need to write a love story. I need a diner. I need two actors, and I just sort of decided. And then I thought about Sanait. She's an actress.
So she's beautiful.
Yeah, so I was like, that actress, I'm going to ask her. So I go back the next day, and I wrote the first draft that night. Wow. Having done it for so long, and I had the space and the time, I just came up with something, and I came up with a twist piece. And so y'all know what the twist is. Whoever's listening or watching will have to come to a film festival, or a theater, or stream or something. But I came up with that twist piece, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to write. So I go back and find her the next day, and I said, I think I wrote something for you. And she goes, cool. So I was like, it was that easy. So I met my first AD there. I met another PA there. And then at the wrap party, there was a friend of mine said she had met someone who owned a wine bar. And I said, I can make it in a wine bar. So I rewrote it to be in a wine bar. And so that began this sort of really exciting pre-production. And I called a few people. I was like, hey, we've been meaning to work together. And so this, I called Shaka Jamal, who's the producer on it. I had met Desiree LeCap, who was my DP. And I had looked at her for another project. And I called her back and I was like, I think I want you to work with me on this project. She said, cool. So I'm getting like all these yeses. And I just took it as the universe saying it's time. So I specifically started walking around saying, I'm a director.
That's right.
Because I had to believe it. And I think at the time I didn't really believe it. I was very comfortable as a screenwriter. But moving into, my directorship, I guess, was interesting. And I had a director mentor, Robert Poole. Shout out to Robert Poole. He's a really, really good filmmaker that I had met at the Nashville International Black Film Festival. And he sort of mentored me through reshaping my thinking. And he said, I'm an educator, also, so a high school teacher. And he said, you have everything you need.
Wow.
You just need to repurpose it for directing.
Yeah.
And it came it felt really natural. And I was like, I guess I do have that. And then I said, well, I'm a director.
That's right.
Until we got to set. And Taylor Ann kept saying, you're the director.
Let me help
we worked
you.
together, yeah.
Yeah. So you shot Dawn in 3 days.
Yes.
Tell us about that. That's okay. We made it work.
Yeah. So pre-production, for those who aren't familiar with, the three phases are pre-production, production, and post-production. And I was just saying that pre-production feels like that long line you're waiting in to ride that ride everybody wants to ride. And then you get on the ride and it's, a solid 3 minutes. And then, the exhale at the end is sort of the post-production when you're sort of processing everything. So the planning and everything happened in pre-production. We had casting. I had met Sinite and then met Conrad Cheeks. I don't even remember where I met him first. Here at CL was one of the spaces. But when I met him at CL, I had invited him to the casting. And so I was like, hey, I don't know if this is your type of thing, but you're an actor, come on out. And I had seen some of his comedic work online because he does lots of little shorts online. He's really funny. Yeah. But this was a dramatic romance, role. And so I wasn't sure that he was right for the role, but, I invited him. I also invited Kevin Munson, who we had looked at for another project that Shaka and I were going to work on, pilot. And so I called him and I was like, hey, you might want to come audition for this. And then we had one more actor. And we got them into a room. And Conrad just sort of, like it was made for him. And I had asked each of them to come with a backstory for the character. Conrad's backstory was so good. I was like, yeah, that's what I meant. When I wrote it. Mind. That's right. Exactly. How'd you know? But he sort of really captivated us. And it was his. Like, he walked in very humble, really likable, took over the role, and he and Sinite really worked well together. Kevin, who's an incredible talent, we kept him on, and he is singing an original song because he's also a singer with an incredible voice. So it sort of all... It was really, I keep saying, let's make magic, and it felt magical.
It did.
I called Taylor Ann and had been just wanting to work with you on something. And yes, Sorors, yes. So, representing. And yeah, I just kept getting yeses, and I felt like it was the universe's way. And I probably could have gotten yeses before, but I wasn't ready to see them, to acknowledge them when people were saying, oh, you should that just felt huge. And now I'm like, well, I'm just going to call it. Oh, I'm just going to call shot. Oh, I'm just going to. And it worked out. So
it's something to be said about making things within your community too.
Yes.
It feels more natural
Yes.
and less of a feat.
Yeah. You know, years ago I was at South by Southwest in Austin at a film festival, and Oliver Stone was the keynote speaker, and the moderator had asked, if you knew then what you know now, what would you have changed? And he said, I would only create with people I like.
Wow.
And I've walked with that for years, and I was like, how's that even possible? But this time I realized how possible that was. The set really felt good, and it made it feel more magical, because what comes out on the other end, if you're all walking in daily and you, like, we couldn't wait to see each other. It was exhausting. Like, it's hard, you know, to make a film. But there was so much enthusiasm and so much passion behind it for each person in their role, and they were bringing their best selves to set. And it felt great that they were willing to invest that much in my project. So,
wow.
That's wonderful.
It was great.
How did you get started as a writer? I'm just curious. I don't even know that.
So I was a poet and a sort of I went to Tuskegee University. Shout out to Tuskegee. So my
TCU?
Yes,
right.
TU. You know, my undergraduate degrees in English. And I had been writing poetry for years, and I kept having these opportunities, this sort of moments. I met Maya Angelou, and so I had this poem that was doing really well, and it was used as the opening for her keynote address one year. So I got to meet her, and it was wonderful. And so I kept having these sort of. I went to Cave Canem, and Cave Canem is a fellowship for Black poets. And I had a mentor, not from Cave Canem, but who was she's the cousin of one of my best friends from high school, and she is, shout out to Stacy Evans Morgan, but she at the time was a TV writer, and she said, you know, your poetry is really visual, you should think about screenwriting. And I was like, I hadn't even conceptualized what that was. And she said, well, you're a storyteller, go to this story seminar by Robert McKee, and if you like that, then you'll know. So
wait, you went to the actual story?
I went to story
with Robert McKee.
And
you met Maya Angelou? What is this?
Sounds like serendipity to me.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So I went to LA. I was living in Austin. I flew to LA where all the people were to take and I fell in love. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a storyteller. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I started then, and about 3 years in, I had entered something in Sundance and gotten to the first phase of, the level 2 or whatever. But it's really sort of a pitch phase, because with Sundance Screenwriters Lab, you pitch your idea and you pitch yourself essentially. And then for the second level, you enter the script. And so I had hit that phase 3 times, but could never get into the lab. And so I was like, well, what do I do with this? So I just kept writing. So over the years had been writing, and in 20, and life was happening. So I was living in Austin, I got in a divorce, I was a single mom and doing all this stuff and restarting my life, ended up moving here, remarried. And in 2012, I ran into a college friend who had a short film. Shout out to Kevin Avery, who's now my 2-time Emmy-winning friend. But
Kevin.
Yes, but he had Thugs the Musical. It was a short in the San Francisco International Film Festival or something. And so I met him there. He was like, hey, yeah, come hang out and, come see my film. So I was like, how did you do this? So he mentored me through my first film, Curdled. He said, take a scene from something you're working on and shoot it. I was like, what does that mean? So I found a producer. That producer knew the director who I ended up working with, Yolanda Gerald. Yolanda Gerald is best friends or something with Keke Palmer's mom. So Keke Palmer was in my first film.
Wow.
Yeah. This is
That's so special.
I've said wow like 10 times already.
Well, it's super crazy because when you're writing, you have this like dream list of people you want to work with. And so I had put Robin Lee. Robin Lee is like the Black actress that you know, but you don't know. Like, who's that? But I mean, now we know her. She also wrote a book, The Idea of You, that was recently made into a film. So Robin Lee was also in Curdled. So Robin Lee, Shanoa Maxwell, and who's Shanoa Maxwell's local. But Shanoa Maxwell and Robin Lee were they had made this film in the 90s that got distribution at Sundance. And so it was a big deal back then. It was called Have Plenty. And they were both, so the first time they were both in a film together was my film, which felt exciting. But them, along with Keke Palmer. So we did the film festival through 2015. And we had shot it as a pilot. But Keke's career sort of had a different trajectory. And during the time, the one studio that really liked it was OWN, but Tyler Perry had exclusive rights to original content on OWN, so we couldn't do anything with it, or at least that was my understanding. And so it just sort of, like, it didn't go anywhere. So I just kept writing, and fast forward to simultaneously, I had gotten my master's in special education and started teaching, and so now I live a double life as a teacher and a director now. So,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the writing doesn't stop. But
does that ever cross over to the classroom at all, like with your students?
It inspires my students a lot. So I have more students now interested in like, we should have a whole screenwriting set, or we want to come and see you. I love being accessible to them because it gives them the idea of possibility, right? Who they can become and access, like, I'm an open book for them. So, I did for 1 year have a script to screen elective where we collaborated and wrote a script. They acted in it, we shot it. They were in charge of all of the things. It was wonderful. It was chaotic too, but it was great.
That's awesome.
So there is some overlap sometimes. I have written several scripts about my school, but I can't really because I'm too close. Like, I haven't gotten to the end of it because I don't know what it's about yet. I feel like I'm still journeying in education, so we'll see.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
What is like your directing process on Dawn? Were there like last minute script changes? Did anything change on the day? Can you speak about the process of actually directing the film?
Yes. So we had our first reading was with BFC group first, and we got great feedback. Thank you so much. So there were changes before we even got to the set, and the actors, because they're also writers and producers and creatives, they brought some other things. Well, I don't understand this part, or so we would have lots of dialogue about the characters. And we did have rehearsals. We had 3 rehearsals. One of them actually was at my school. But we, got it in where we could, when we could. And, just sort of based on some of what came out of those interactions and collaborations, there were some things that changed. I think the journey is essentially the same. There were also several things that changed because once you shoot the thing, we ran out of time. We didn't get some of the shots as we're going through post-production and reorganizing, right? So it's sort of like we have all the cards, but do they still make sense in the way that, it was written? So my process started out, it's sort of linear, right? We came into the space together, we collaborated, we talked about the script and their ideas, and then we got to set, and some of those things shifted based on, some limitations or whatever we had to restructure based on the shoot itself. and the very real energy of being on set. So as a first-time director, I was also learning myself in that role. So I'm a very confident teacher. I'm a very confident writer. I'm a confident friend, daughter, every other thing. But director, I was learning. We had, and you're learning all the personalities. So my director mentor said, your job is to make sure that everyone is there in service of the film. That is your baby. You are carrying it to and fro and, making sure it's handled the way you intend for it to be handled. And in doing that, what I realized is my most regulated and grounded place was with the actors and with the DP, because we had each spent so much time together. They had to embody the actors had to embody the roles, and the DP had to visually translate the script. So on day one, when everybody was asking questions and everybody's questions are most important, right? And I'm trying to tend to their needs and mine and ground the actors, and it was overwhelming. It was 16 hours of lots of things. And Taylor Ann, thank you so much for
stop it.
Really, no, seriously. Every now and then Taylor Ann would be like, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I can go get it." No, you can.
The director.
Yeah, and whatever that means, right? I was learning what that meant. So by day 2, I started with the actors. I went to where they were. I was like, "Hey," had a conversation with them. "How are you feeling today?" Did check-ins with them. And then when I got to set, I went straight to the DP. "Hey, you know what? Let's, make sure that as we're moving, I understand you, you understand me." And she was like, "Absolutely." And so after that, I felt like it was really tight. I engaged more with people, I think, than some people might have been used to, but it felt good.
Yeah.
That's your style, though.
Yeah.
How is your note giving? Did you figure, how did you give notes to the actors when it came time to adjust their performance?
I felt like they didn't believe me, but they were hitting the marks.
Oh wow.
We had rehearsed together, they had rehearsed, and there were times they were coming and they were killing it. I was like, "All right, cut, we good, let's go." And they were like, "We don't need to do that." I was like, "Nah, that was good. 2 takes, yep." And I think the first day we had multiple takes because as a crew, we were all getting to know each other. "Hey, the lighting is hitting too much here. Hey, what is that thing? We're seeing the boom," right? So all these things were happening. By the second day, I really felt like there was a rhythm that worked well. By the third day, though, we were running out of time. And one of the things I learned, the writer in me was very ambitious. The director in me had to, sort of help navigate.
They had to have a conversation between themselves.
That's right.
That's right. So I had to give the writer a call that night and say, "Hey, we're not going to be able to, do these things." But we did have to combine some scenes. We lost a couple scenes. So we're still right now working through making sure that what we have works together in a way that makes sense for the film.
And then hopefully we can shop that, and
yes,
you'll have a feature, and then you can have all the things.
Yes, a feature or a series.
I like that.
Yeah, this could very well be a proof of concept because of that twist where it lands. I think it opens up possibilities. So
that's right. I like that.
Yeah.
So, who would you say is your biggest influence in filmmaking, if you have one?
Ooh, right now, Ava DuVernay.
Okay. Why?
I have watched her independently navigate systems that were not designed to support her, and do so in a way that, because initially when I first started, so Middle of Nowhere came out, but she had a film before that. And I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. But I was watching her and then followed her on on another platform where we actually
It shall not be named.
Yes, that which we shall not name, yes. And we were both watching Saturday Night Live once, and she said something, and then I said something, and she said something, and I was like, oh, she said, and I got excited.
Yeah.
And she followed me, and
Wow,
so and to this day still follows me. I don't know that it means anything because I'm not very active on that platform.
That's right.
But she's been secretly mentoring me. I've watched her masterclass. I've read all the things and watched her do so many things, and watched her messaging in film. Like, she doesn't have a film that's frivolous, right? She doesn't have a film, which we should be able to do, right? I should be able to make a Dumb and Dumber version of whatever. But that's not, I think our voices closely align. I think who she is as a filmmaker is who I aspire to be. And that she did it when she's a little older because, smoke and mirrors, but I'm not a spring chicken as much as I would like to, But I'm also championing, the early part of my life was ensuring that my children had what I did not have, was sort of recovering from some early childhood trauma. And then, I think as a filmmaker, I get to reclaim my, some of that time and give voice where I didn't have one before. And so I watch her give voice in ways that I hope that my legacy as a filmmaker, sort of mirrors.
That's beautiful.
She's a very ambitious filmmaker, especially with Origin that she made a couple years ago.
Oh my goodness, yes.
All those countries and all those like cultures that she tried to highlight in one film.
Yeah.
I thought it worked. I know certain people have their thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But definitely what I loved a lot about Ava DuVernay is how she pushes the envelope as much as she can.
Yeah.
Even with that 13th documentary that she made. So that's an amazing person to look up to for sure.
Yeah. She's super dope. And I'm grateful to be alive during the time that she, that if our paths ever cross, that would be amazing. But I am also, very closely watching Jodie Foster. I watched her masterclass, and some of the things that she said directly influenced how I showed up to set.
Okay.
So,
you want to touch on a couple of those things?
That she said, you don't have to know everything. That's and real. I was like, oh my gosh. While I'm, really studying everything, she said, you know what? Your gaffer's going to come up and be like, hey, this blah, blah, blah. And she said, I would be like, I don't know what that is. But these are the technicians that are supposed to know. You don't have to be able to say exactly what their lighting, whatever should be. What you should be able to say is, I want it to be warm. I want to feel the depth of blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's me. That's my language. So that was one of the things she gave me permission to do, is not have to know everything. And I think Ava DuVernay, one of the things she said was to see everybody. When you're on set, see everybody who is collaborating, because everybody is instrumental to the thing that you're making, and they care enough to be there.
They're making sacrifices for you.
Yeah, and that does not it's not lost on me. So yeah.
That was felt on set. It felt like you, in some spaces where we should have been doting on you, you were doting on us. And we're like, we love you, thank you, but this is your movie. So, love back to you for that, for sure.
Thank you. I think that's my comfort space. Like, love is my love language. Give like this a reciprocation of care and concern and love for people is where I feel like I do my best work. If I feel and I think that even as a country, like, people's proximity to love says a lot about how they show up. And so if you feel like you've been in a space, and I think a part of it is, is being a teacher, but if you've been in a space where somebody cares about you, you act differently.
That's right.
And I try to be that everywhere.
That's right. It allows you to be more vulnerable It allows your actors, your people on set to just be themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like you do the best work when you can be more vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even on collaboration, like what you said earlier, it's so important to allow the people that you have hired to do their job on set, because you hired them for a reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of directors want to hold all the controls, and that never elevates the material, because you've just made what was in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that before. I made a short film that was just like what I thought it was going to be. I was like, well, I don't really like that. Because then it's just like there was no magic to it. It was dead.
Uh-huh.
It was what I wrote on the page. That's exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, this is... But like you said, if you say, like, I want it to feel like this. I want it to feel like that. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is one of the best questions you can ask on set? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yep.
You get to hear what other people's ideas are. Again, they're here for you. So let them be there for you, basically. So.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I love that.
So
I'm going to take that with me, too.
what was your favorite thing about making Dawn? Like, what was something that was just like, I just think about this thing and I just love it. I know there's probably so many things, but...
You know, the transformation of the space, the wine bar, like, so it's this great shout out to Hotel Byron Wine Bar and Art Gallery in San Francisco. If you don't have a favorite wine bar place, like, visit there. And Ron is a great host. So it's got this great, beautiful brick wall, like, that lined one side, and the ceiling is wine corks. And it's got old pipes and stuff going through it, and it's such a cool spot. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it doesn't need much. Shout out to Sarah Bryant Cole, our production designer, came in and, like, put up shelves. We had Theopolis Vineyards was our wine sponsor, so we had wine set up, and Salia Sadiq, who is an incredible photographer who also happens to be my daughter, was commissioned to do some wine photos throughout the space. But when you looked at it as a set, it was pretty incredible. And I was like, this is so dope. Like, you know, just the transformation of one space into something that your imagination created, and people coming together to create that, right? And I had these ideas when we started with the script. There was this photo that I was like, oh my gosh, I want my daughter to create this photo. And so I had my mind on that photo, and what she created wasn't exactly that, but it was incredible in its own right. The wine donation, so Theopolis came through big time, and I thought that was supposed to go one particular way, but it didn't, and it went differently. Like, I was thinking we need more wines, and, you know, from other people and all this stuff, but things came together the way they should, and not necessarily the way I had dreamt up in my head. So I think the transformation is one thing. Creating the world is world building, right, in real life. So that was the thing. I got excited to walk on set every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was definitely excited to be there. I was grateful to be there.
What was one thing you looked forward to?
I just like seeing things come from, you know, pre-light to the end result. You know, I missed day 3. Had to go back to school.
Yeah.
But just seeing it transform from that wine bar to set, and then it's like, okay, we're done with this scene. Now we have to shift and move everything around, and because I was also PAing on this, so shift and move everything around, and now it's this. You know, we had but everything happened in the wine bar.
Yeah.
You know, the wedding scene and them bantering at the wine bar, and then I was blessed to be an extra in there, so chatting with our other background actress about, you know, whatever with Sinight's character. It was, I don't know, it was a cool thing to see.
I felt like we were superheroes, because it was like one thing, and then it was another thing, and it was another thing, and yeah, it was really dope. It was really dope.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like the funding process?
Whew.
The
Yes.
scariest word in filmmaking
Yes,
ever.
it is.
Money.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So we are still fundraising. So it can be it feels like a nonstop process. We started out, we had a crowdfunding kickoff, and one of the things that I really realized is when we started this, you said that I took the risk to do this, and it's a big financial risk, right? And I kept thinking, well, I'm just a teacher, I don't know. And I was a screenwriter out of safety for a long time because I didn't know if I could afford to make a film. But you figure it out when you make that decision to do a thing. You figure it out in the same way that if you decide I want to go on vacation, you figure out how to make that vacation. How you start a fund or something. So, shout out to my husband, Ronnie Smith, drummer, and life partner, soulmate. But he has just been like, we'll figure it out. And I was like, but what if? He's like, this is what you want to do. We'll figure. And I think it's been a blessing to be with an artist because he understands. Yeah. So we have been figuring it out. But we raised probably $25,000, which supported production. And Shaka and I are both executive producers, so we brought funding. And then shout out to Nina Fox, who is our third executive producer on this. And tip for anyone who's doing crowdfunding or fundraising, when you solicit to people who may have corporate jobs, they can do match funding. So we benefited from Nina, who came with $5,000 as an executive producer. She works for Google, and Google did match funding, so that gave us another $5,000. So, and even if you have friends who have match funding and they give 50, that's another 50 that gets matched, so it's $100. Mm-hmm. Every $5, there were people who donated $5, and I am grateful for that because they didn't have to, right? But everywhere from whatever people can donate, time, resources, money.
So let's transition just a little bit. Do you have any personal goals for your next steps in your career that you're working toward?
So interestingly, now that I've stepped into the role of director, I've had a few people like, hey, let's, do these things. So later this month, February, yes, I'm a guest director on Bernadette the Brave, which is a project that is, so Brave Maker is my fiscal sponsor for, and what that means is they are a nonprofit, so that when people make donations, there's a nonprofit, it's tax deductible. And there's another project that is also fiscally sponsored by Brave Maker, and it's a YouTube series called Bernadette the Brave, and they have guest directors, and so I was invited to be a director on that.
Congratulations!
Thank you. Thank you. It's exciting. And I also was recently asked. I have been a volunteer and supporter of Black Girls Film Camp. And I started out as as a volunteer in their writer's room, giving feedback to some of the girls. And it's a camp for girls, I want to say 13 to 19, to learn filmmaking as they come into filmmaking as directors. And they get incredible resources and access to women in the film industry. But I was asked at the end of this month, to support the boot camp. So I'll be going to Florida.
That's exciting.
To do their boot camp. So I'm very excited about that too. So also Dr. Jamaica Anderson is a soror. So
shout out to yes. I love that. There's something to be said about, because we just interviewed another DiffWorks, and there's something to be said about that education filmmaking bridge. I don't know. It seems like it goes hand in hand in most spaces. So
yeah.
Kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
There are lots of things that I think carry over from as a teacher into directing. And I think if someone were to do it the other way, go from directing to teaching, yeah, well, because you have to have you have to have the type of disposition that can tolerate lots of needs.
Yes.
Lots of different skill sets.
Real patience.
Patience, yeah.
Understanding, care, concern. I feel like all that you do learn in a classroom because you're working with small children in most cases, the only reason I don't say the other way around is because if you're working with adults, some of us don't have patience for adults,
That's
but
true.
we'll always have patience for children and people with disabilities, things like that,
Well, I'm high school, so I always say we got to be able to me and my students are like, all right.
That's real.
Yeah, all day.
That's real.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for stopping by and sharing this knowledge with us and your experience directing Dawn. We cannot wait to see it.
Yes.
Please, once it's done, do come back and let's talk about it in more detail.
Absolutely.
I know today we didn't want to go too much into the film itself, but more of the story of how it got made. But obviously, once it's ready, we would love to talk more about it.
I'm here. I would love to come back. Thank you so much.
That's right. Well, we do want to end with a game. Can we end with a game?
Absolutely.
A little game. There's a special place in my heart for the movie Vampire in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So if you had to recast Eddie Murphy's character, who would you put in that role in 2025?
And we're doing, okay.
But it could be anybody though. But who would you recast?
Vampires don't age, so anybody can play.
That's right.
Right. So, I think I've been wanting to cast this person in something for a while, but Luke James.
Okay.
Initially, I was gonna say Michael B. Jordan because he's, I just saw him in Sinners, the trailer for Sinners.
Yeah.
And this
trailer.
sort of grit that he's, he was also, come on,
Creed?
No, Black Panther.
Oh yes.
Killmonger.
Yeah, Killmonger.
Yes.
So I feel like that's easy, but Luke James, I have him in another role, and I think that's where.
Awesome.
Yeah. Who would y'all cast?
Oh gosh. Well, now I would say Aaron Pierre. That's Mufasa.
Oh, yeah. That's he was also
Every woman I know for the last 2 weeks or so has been replaying that dance, that walk down the. My sister's like, when have we seen Mufasa? When have we seen Mufasa? I'm like, he's not. It's just his voice, right? Like, for me, I think Lakeith would do a great job. In that role.
Okay.
Lakeith Stanfield is someone I hope to work with at some point. I love his range and versatility.
Yeah.
I'm excited for his role in the new Boots Riley movie once that gets shot.
Yeah.
Big fan of Lakeith.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that too.
Cool. Well, thank you, Shia. Thank you for
Thank
spending
you.
some time with us.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you had a great time as well.
I did. Congratulations on this platform.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And for those watching, please like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends' friends, your school, your job, your church, everyone you ever meet on the road. Just say Sideshow.
Sideshow Podcast.
Sideshow Podcast.
And follow us at Black Film Connect on Instagram.
Thank you and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Peace.